6 is finding your Africaness. This came with a link. Let me see if I was told to start at a certain place for this one. No. Okay. So it came with a link. Let's check it out, then we'll discuss.
From what I understand, you were exposed to Black consciousness while living in America. Please tell us about the experiences and literature that helped heighten your awareness of self and your African heritage.
It was the first time that I saw Miriam Makeba on TV, and her hair was just cut so short. But I said, what a beautiful Black woman. And I wanted to look like that. And, I went and cut off my hair. My family didn't understand it. I went to work on the Monday morning, and everybody said, what a way you look ugly. I said, what a way you look ugly? What you do with your hair? But that didn't deter me. And it was at the time with the Black Panthers. There was Slick with, Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture. It was Malcolm X time. I wasn't too much into Martin Luther King. I have to admit that. Because that didn't really appeal to me. There was a sort of Black militancy inside of me that needed more than this turn the other cheek business. Well, it really wasn't onto that. That's where it started. And then I had done some volunteer work. I was within the Garment Industry Union. I did some volunteer work for they asked for union people to do for the yellow cab people in New York. They didn't have a union, and they were forming a union, and they need people to work volunteer. And for that, they gave me a scholarship to Cornell University Extension to do Black studies. And that was it. I went into the class, the only Jamaican and the only person that did not know about Marcus Garvey, other than just hearing the name. Mm-hmm. Other than just hearing the name. Even though I knew of Bag of Wire, and the only thing I knew was that, Bag of Wire catch a fire. And Bag of Wire sell out Marcus Garvey for, 30 shilling or whatever, rice and peas, whatever. That was it. When I came back to Jamaica, when I had to return to the United States, I ended up in Brooklyn, among the most Afrocentric people that I had ever met in my life. Now that took me to a whole different level. A friend of mine said to me, I want to take you to the African American Ballet. I said, ballet? You're not going to know ballet. And he said, no, man, it's a different kind of something, this. And when I went, and I heard the drumming and the dancing and all these people dressed up in African clothes, and everybody's so beautiful. It did something to me. And the first time I put on a piece of African fabric with all the colors, it was like my spirit just wake up, and it was like, wow, this is what I've been missing, Yeah. But that did a lot for me. And it also made me realize that in Jamaica, nothing really African was happening, in my opinion. Rastafari was talking certain things, but that Africanness was only limited to a few people. Yes. So that's where I got that. I should also mention that my father was a seaman, and he used to go to, as he got, in his elder years, he had a choice of where he wanted to go on, which ships he wanted to go on. And he always chose to go to Africa. And if you go inside the house, you will see there is. He started bringing me back these artifacts. And he said to me, don't ever sell them because you can never get the value for them. And I've never sold them, no matter how I get broke. And I sell them. It's just figure that generation to generation, you have to pass these things down. So there is a lot of little contributing factors. I remember when I was maybe about 8, 9 years old, and there was this woman who came to visit my grandmother. And somewhere in the conversation, I heard that she lived in Africa and she was married to a chief. And I never forgot that. But of course, at that age, you can't ask the person's name. You can't ask nothing. But I never forgot that. Never forgot that. Mhm.
Most Jamaicans who find success in America stay at least until they retire. Yet you came back at home when you would have made more money staying in the US. Why did you come back?
I went to America when I was like 17 years old. And I first was in Brooklyn, and then I was in Los Angeles, California. And there was something that was unfulfilled, like I wanted to do. And I really wanted to leave America. There was something that was not there for me. And I was fortunate enough to get a job with a multinational corporation that brought me to Jamaica. Jamaica was not my first choice, but they said, well, that's where you're from, and we need somebody there, so we'll send you there. When I got here now, you can imagine ending up in the tourism industry, coming from all of this blackness and the people at the front desk, the people couldn't braid their hair. They couldn't, an afro, forget it. It was like shock. I think I really went into culture shock. At this time, our music was like, wow. And no, you have to host cocktail parties. Who, me? Host a cocktail party? No way. When you want to go and dance? Oh, and dance. I was a misfit. I was a total misfit in that setting, because working in the hotel industry in America, it's a job. You go there, in my position, you go there 9 and you get off at 5 and you go about your business. In Jamaica, in certain positions in the tourism industry, and we call it the tourism industry, you are expected to be, part of that industry. So you have to talk a certain way and behave a certain way because you're representative of that industry. And you're not supposed to keep company with the line staff, like the gardeners and they used to call them housemaids at that time. You weren't supposed to really keep company, but those are the people that needed love. Because they used to talk my language and they like the music what me like. So that was it. But as I say, I was fortunate enough. And when I came on a 2-year contract, and after a year and a half, I realized that if I was to go through with that, I was going to be physically sick. I couldn't manage it. It was just so painful to me to see Black people who never catch a plane and twanging just because I'm in a one situation. And I said, I'm going back to America, but I'm not going back to live. I'm going back to get myself together to come back to Jamaica, because there is work here to be done. I never at any time felt that I was going to live in America, give America all of my youth, and when I reach 65 and I can barely walk anymore, I come home and talk about my retire. I don't see how that benefit the country. And since me did find fault with the situation, I felt that I should do something about it. And that's how I ended up here.
Well, let me hear you say mountain, mountain.
Yeah, I really appreciated her talk. I'll say 2 things. I think that perspective needs to be put on what she's saying also. She's older than I am. So she's talking those times probably pre-independence in Jamaica and the Caribbean. One of the things I'll say about Caribbean folks is we understand that we're African, but we don't really do much with it. And I think that's one of the shortcomings we have. We have certain cultural retentions that we are aware of, but I think we kind of know that we're supposed to be doing a little bit more with that stuff. And I think that's where we kind of fail. And that's where the Africans in America get this talking point that they're pushing these days, that Pan Africanism really worked in America and it was a one-sided thing, and they're the ones who fight against white supremacy and this, that, and the other more than the rest of us. But the thing about it is that the design was different. In the Caribbean, even when you still had British rule, you saw those Brits and stuff, but in your everyday life, ain't no white man was right there on you. And especially after independence. Like for example, I'm born just a few years after independence, and I grew up knowing a black prime minister all my life. I grew up knowing black priests and stuff like that. My grandparents had experiences with those white priests from England and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't know that stuff, right? But in America, the design is different. I'm sorry to say it, and I mean no offense, but in America, the Africans in America are completely subdued. From elementary school, they've seen a white woman teaching them, right? White dude teaching them PE or something like that. White dude is the principal. Their doctors are white. They're I mean, everything with them in those formative years, they really deal with a white face, a pale face. And so, yeah, they have some more resistance because, yeah, they faced it face to face, and they're still facing it now, right? Whereas in the Caribbean, and I would assume Africa, by the time you really got to deal with one of these other people, our enemies, these pale faces, you're in like the government or something, or in the gated communities, or the east or west or something like that. Like, you are a distance from them. And so the one thing I want to get across is just to put what she's saying into a perspective. And that goes for the Africans in America who claim that they fight white supremacy harder than everyone else, and this, that, and the other that they say. It's really because of the design. But I'll leave that there. I'll go to Marcus Garvey is the way. What are your thoughts?
I agree with what you said in terms of our Caribbean experience versus the American experience with Europeans. Because white people are not part of our daily existence. We have tourist season, so basically that's when you see more white people around, but they don't really have interactions with you directly unless you really in a particular field of work, or unless they're lost. But in terms of her finding her Africanness, I she has a very interesting story, and I enjoyed what I heard. Um, you know, Sadly, she said she cut her hair, and she was looked down on and all that stuff. And I think even today you still get, unfortunately, that same response from black people. That's why you see so much donkey hair, fake hair, weaves, all that stuff. But she did make a point, and she said that the music in Jamaica was really the music was very I guess Bob Marley and stuff was around that time. However, the concept of Africanness was not there, because even if you think of Rastafarianism is really, in my opinion, more Christianity than black
Judeo
consciousness. Huh?
Judeo-Christian blackface. Yeah.
Yeah. You could. It's more that than, to me, black consciousness. But I have to give Rastafarians the props where they understood that there should be a black god, whether or not whether they say it's Selassie or not. I am happy that they understood that concept, that instead of a white god, you should have a black god, and the sustainable living, and the eating healthier, being more nature-based eating, so I can respect that parts of their, and people can only do what they can do to do better. So I think that was their step to do it better. It wasn't perfect, but it is what it is. But I think in the last 2 or 3 years, I came to understand a lot of Jamaican history through Muta Baruch and listening to his stuff. I didn't know that Rastafarians in that time were what do you call it, criminalized for having locks. Like they would be arrested for having locks and be forced in prison and have their locks cut off. All this time Bob Marley was around and being promoted, but Rastafarians were basically persecuted as a people for wanting to embrace the Africanness. So you know it's interesting. Caribbean history is very interesting, versus American history. Our black experience in the diaspora is a very interesting thing, and the level of self-hate that still existed in it, even to this day, because you know we can see some things that she said is still valid to our existence or our reality today. So that's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for that. Trigger Happy 262 in the chat said, that's why I like that first prompt. When you have a centralized party, you can simply institutionalize cultural nationalism and African culture. None of that, quote unquote, out of many, one people, all African stuff. You hear Jamaicans say that a lot. Trigger Happy 262 says, yeah, this is essentially the dynamic of internal colonialism versus exploitative colonialism. Internal colonialism is more regional. When they say, quote, immigrants are running, and of course the Great Migration was running, yeah, that's a good point. Also, I think when it comes to Africans in America, I say the South, at the very least, some areas don't see white people until a certain point in their life when they have to pursue higher learning. Yeah, I've heard Southerners describe the South as having kind of a Caribbean culture, actually. Afro-Native world is still here. He says the first Rastas were Gaviites. That's often forgotten. He says Burning Spear has definitely put out a lot of Black African consciousness. Yeah, I want to shout out what's my man's name again? Damn it. There's a great reggae Rastafarian. I can't remember his name right now. Who's supposedly in the hospital, very sick right now. Why can't I remember his name? Freddie McGrath.
It's a song. It's a song.
Is who? Who?
Name a song. Name a song. I'll get you the name. What's the name of the artist?
It's on YouTube right now. If you have
A song, the artist.
Yeah, he's on YouTube. I saw a clip of it tonight, but I can't remember his name.
Yeah, it's I'll figure it out.
It's there, but just
yeah, not Burning Spear. It's
an older reggae singer. Yeah, it's an older reggae singer. Actually, no, I thought it was Pele. No, the person I saw was Pele. I'm sorry, I think it was Pele.
Pele apparently is on like life support or something.
Life support, yeah. I think it's that one that I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a reggae artist. I'll remember in just a second. I can see his face. He's kind of a ball rasta now. I can see his face. Anyway, Mr. Sorry, did I get gassed him up on this one yet?
Yeah, I'm just gonna let not to be like anything, but I think because I don't think I'd be qualified to make a contribution. So I love what she said, and I like what because it's not with the topic, but what Trigger Happy said about Black people, the Great Migration being a tether movement from the South to the inner cities. That was an excellent point. I've been saying that before. So shout out to him. But yeah, I don't think I'm qualified to contribute to the topic, but I love what she said.
All right. Bwana Hagaziki, what say you?
I personally think that void that is missing with the continent of Africa. And I think that we are the children, and I repeat this in many different forms. We are the children of Africa, and I think that that is not. Uh, there are people who would say that we are English or British or whatever you want to call it, and there are African Americans who would say that they are the children of Uncle Sam. But in truth, we are the children of Africa. And Africa, I understand that they are disjointed, but I think that more should have been done to reach out to her children, to bring back a connection. Children need to to their mother. You know what I mean? Children need to make a connection with their mother, and this is why you see people all over the Western world, in particular these black enclaves, that feel as if that they exist within a space that they don't necessarily belong. Why? Because we are the children of Africa. You know, we exist in these climates, but we are the children of Africa, and I think that there are Africans, well, people who have not the powerless, people who have power should have made more of an effort to reach out to her, back to her children. That's not necessarily has been done, even though we in the Caribbean have sing songs about Mother Africa, talking about Africa, this Africa, that, whatever. And I find that there's not been that same kind of energy for her children to come back. Whether it's in entertainment, whether it's in the political arena, whether it's even in the social arena. They like reggae music. They like whatever. You know what I mean? But they don't necessarily. There should be more of a reaching out that should be done. And Haley Selassie, I did give land, and that is true, as African World has said. And there has been people who have went back to benefit from that, but not in terms of the masses of the people. I think that there's more that should be done to make a connection and a link back with her children, and I think that that's not happened as yet. But I think that it shouldn't be one way. Like Mia Motley is making attempts, and there are other Caribbean countries as well been making attempts. And you see the little African leaders come over, but I think that there should be more of an embrace of the children of Africa, in particular in the West, whether it's Brazil or the Caribbean or even in Africa. And it's at this point where I would agree with the so-called militant integrationists of FBA and ADOS, where there should be more of an approach of African countries trying to reclaim or make a connection with her children in the Western Hemisphere. So on that front, I would understand what this woman believes and thinks, because you feel disjointed in the West. I mean, in particular, in white countries, whether it's you in Canada, England, or the Americas, you feel disjointed. You don't feel as a part of that society or community, and that's for a reason. That is for a reason. You know what I mean? And I think that reason is clear, and I think that there should be more of an effort to make that reestablishment or a reconnection with our mother country. That is our mother continent, not country, continent. I'll stop there. I'll stop there.
I appreciate that, Buana. Yeah, it was Freddie McGregor that's been hospitalized for a little minute now. Is there any other last words for this prompt? All right, let's go to breeze prompt number 7 tonight. Shoot the breeze.